Thank you. I often give body signals back and inviting you to do that if you want to. And if this is annoying, just inviting you to be generous with me because it happens spontaneously. And that's all I need to say, I think. It's very brief. We are going to share those after this session. And I'm going to pass to Theresa, who's also hosting this session with me.
Hello and welcome again. We would like to get a bit of a sense for who's in the room with us today before we dive into the content. So I will invite you to use the chat and just type in there where you're currently based and maybe one word about how you are. Devon, UK, heartwarmed, Germany, springy, Scotland, sleepy, Devon, UK, curious, Vienna, cloudy, London, energetic, South Alentejo, Portugal, Brazil, curious, Brussels, springy, Portugal with a cold. Oh, hoping you feel better soon. Hungry people, sunny people, grateful people, spanning continents. So great to see all of you here. I will also invite you to do a quick twinkle finger poll, which is going like this. I say something that is true for me, and if it's true for you as well, you might respond like this, and we have a visual feedback. If you are working without your video, you can just type a plus or a me too in the chat. So maybe one of them could be, I had breakfast today. Many people with breakfast. I am part of Transition Network or the transition movement in some way. Also quite a lot of you. Something different. I feel rested today. Tired people, rested people, in between people. I'm taking care of someone or some more than human beings in my life. I've experienced conflict in my either personal or professional life. I've experienced burnout in some way or got in touch with it or reached that kind of space. Yeah. And also I've experienced repair after some conflict happened. I've experienced making up again. And last one, I can think of one thing at least that is resourcing or nourishing or supporting me right now. Thank you. And with that, we're landed in, and I'll pass you on. To Sophy Banks.
That's to me, thank you.
That's to you.
Yeah, so adding my welcome. Lovely to see some familiar faces as well as new ones. I'm just going to give a little introduction to Healthy Human Culture, which is a body of work that came out of my whole life experience, starting with these big questions and seeing that I think the most difficult technology, our biggest challenge is how do we create culture together? Does that feel true for anyone else? You know, we have all of the science technology, but actually the most difficult thing, and it's not just how do we start with a new group and make things happen. It's also, how do we meet and find good ways to be with the enormous legacy of harm that we move and swim in, whatever our body, gender, shape, color, historic, ancestral lineages are. We're all interwoven into these huge systems with our history of colonialism, of racism, of patriarchy, of war and violence, of ancestors that have not been grieved. So I feel like we have this vast legacy that we kind of sit in and then we try to make good things happen. So I felt a kind of, transition for me always had this, let's create a positive vision, let's move to a future that we want. And part of me was always sitting with a question, in order to get to that positive vision, what do we need to encounter? What do we need to meet and heal? Whether it is to do with our relationship with the land, acknowledging that there's no part of the world where people haven't been ripped away from the land. In England, even though we did it in many other countries, English people exported it. So this sense that there's a vast landscape. And it always felt a bit of a tension in transition when we were offering a very positive way to think about the future, to acknowledge that there's also much that we need to heal and look at and include. So healthy human culture is like the emergence of ideas. Once upon a time, I was an engineer, so it's got diagrams and feedback loops in it, which is what engineers like. But it's also trying to include the things that are often excluded from systems thinking. So I met a lot of people who write books about whole systems that leave out the inner dimension. Anyone else read a book like that? Oh, we haven't included worldview or beliefs or collective trauma. And then a lot of people who are writing about culture leave out the trauma aspect. So, again, it can be very positive and not include how do we really work with some of these challenging dynamics. So I don't think healthy human culture has all the answers by any means. But the intention of it is to give us maps and tools that help us to navigate culture, that help us to design culture with consciousness, with insight and intelligence, with as much integrity and love as we can bring. So we're going to share, Dita and Theresa, who also teach this work, are going to share one of the maps, and we'll point to a second one as a little teaser at the end of this session. So deep gratitude to our hosts, and I'm going to hand over to Dita and Theresa to share their introduction. Yeah, thank you all for being here.
Thank you so much, Sophy. I'm just going to invite us to take a moment to allow your words and your voice, to allow Sophy's voice and words to percolate through our bodies. And I just need to say this, the first time I saw Sophy share this, literally something shifted within. I felt the body was just the soil, the ground just moved, and I knew I needed to be part of this. So yeah, for me it's something that makes sense of my life and the world around me. Before going in, so I'm going to be sharing my screen to show you some I hope very, very simple diagrams. But before I do that, I would love to invite us to feel into our bodies a little bit. So, and if this is not something that works for you, inviting you to just tune my voice out for the next 4 minutes. But maybe you find something interesting in your own body. So just inviting us to connect with how we are sitting or standing or laying, and maybe feel the earth underneath you. It helps me to connect with my skin and how it feels in my legs and my buttocks and my back. And for a moment, just feel your breath. I'm inviting you to sense the material part of your body. Maybe the fact that you have cells and muscles and bones. The solidity of your body. Maybe it helps just to touch, just really feel, oh yeah, I am solid, there is matter. And from there, just zooming in and perhaps sensing the space that exists between different structures within the bones, inside your cells. Maybe from there, there is a hint of something that is not part of your physical structure. In some cosmologies, it's called the host within. Some people call it spirit. Some people call it consciousness. Just inviting you to sense a landscape, perhaps, of emotions and thoughts. And just sensing how they are like in a continuum between the material, your body, things that support you in this moment, and how that body might be changing with your thoughts and your emotions, and how your emotions and thoughts may be changing with things that happen in your body, those places of pain, of ease. If it's possible for you, you're just sliding between one extreme and the other, sensing how they interact. Now imagining or remembering or feeling the immediate things around you. Maybe there's some people in the same room where you are or in the same house. And again, just sliding from yourself and those around you, whatever group is closest to you. Maybe it's a family or community. Inviting you to expand from there to larger layers of organization. Maybe even sensing your culture. Those beyond human and beyond. And again, just inviting a short, fluid dance between those layers of collectiveness and yourself, and how we interact, how we inform those different layers, and how they inform us. And then maybe also sensing how the physical, the material is expressed beyond yourself. And whenever you're ready, just coming back to your place where you are sitting. If you had your eyes closed, just opening them and looking around you, looking what's above you and behind you. So this is the start of a very short presentation. where I'm going to, first of all, this is one of the things that I adore from this body of work, is the first thing that Sophy says, is this is not the truth. This is one way that we found to make sense of things. So this, what I'm going to show you, is inspired by work, the integral theory and other integral things of Ken Wilber and others. And like I was saying just before, imagining there is that spectrum that goes from the subjective or the inner, as is also called, and I like that that's inner transition that we're talking about, and the objective, the material, the outer. And if we kind of imagine we can make, so the inner would be the thoughts, the feelings, the identity, the conscious and unconscious things, processes and beliefs, and many more, many other things. These are just a few words. And there might be other things that work for you. And the objective is the structure of things, the material structure, the physical, what's measurable, the products and the behaviors. So the things that go out also into the outside, into the outer. And if we, so it's a continuum, and it informs. So it's not like we can make I cannot make a clear distinction where one starts and when the other one stops. But let's imagine that we can. So we have this kind of two halves of experience, of being, of life. And likewise, now going from the individual, the I, what's mine, this body, and the collective. So what's belonging to me, whether we are separate or not, there's that being that I am, this organism. And the collective, we can just, where does it start? It's two, there's a group, an organization, there's the society and the beyond human, the beyond life, the environment, and we can go far to the universe, the history, the future, etc. So there is that sense of moving between those scales. And again, I can't really make the distinction anymore due to some work that I've been doing, but let's imagine that there is a clear separation. And from there, then we have these 4 quadrants. And if you go to the upper left, then we have the subjective, the inner of the I, which is like my beliefs. I'm just using that as a thing to remember. But again, there's so many other things that are part of the individual and the inner. And if I go towards the outer in the I, then we have my behaviors and my body and all those things that are coming from me towards the outside. And if we are in the lower part on the left, then we have our collective beliefs. What is the stories that we tell? What is our common consciousness? And again, when we go towards the outward on the right, then we have our behaviors, our structures, the way we build things together. And I'm just going to make that we have these 4 quadrants. And again, just remembering, that's why I make that sense of, it's a bit, they influence each other, but we are going to make them like 4 different things for ease to use this practice. And we will just simply call them the I inner, the I outer, the we inner, and the we outer. And all systems have all parts. Again, there is no clear separation. And for me and for us, for a health human culture, the interesting question is, where is the health? Can we move? Where is our agency moving this from one place to another? And so when we go towards the outer, we connect very often with the doing, with the product, with something that we are producing. And when we go towards the inner, we talk about the being. How am I coming? What are my emotions? How am I facing this in this moment? And in any system at any level, there are processes that can support both. And that would be in the collective, which is really important when we have those processes there that are supporting a balance between the doing and the being, but also within the individual. What are the processes, the practices, the questions I may ask that support my doing and my being? And the idea of this as well, the way of applying it, is to ask those questions. How am I? Where are those processes? How are they supporting me? And where can I bring them in? And I just want to make the disclaimer, I can go on about this for a long time, but we're trying to just have more practice time. So I hope this is simple enough. And I am going to stop sharing screen and pass to Theresa.
Thank you. I will invite you for another small embodied ride or some sort of imaginational journey. And if you would like to feel it a little bit more fully, you can stand up and actually move as you're doing things or going through the little journey that I will guide you on. You can also close your eyes if that feels better. If you want, you can turn off your screen. And again, as Dita now invited us to do, bring in awareness to all of the different parts. So to me, to I, how I am inside, and then also what is observable, what is happening to the me on the outside, and the other dimension of the collective. When do I feel a we, a sense of we that is more on the inner side, and when is something shifting in the we on the outer side? So I know that might feel like a lot. If it's distracting you, just let go of that thought and just be really present for what is happening for you. So what I would like you to imagine is you wake up in the morning and it's way too early. It's at least 2 hours before you're supposed to wake up. Somebody made a real noise. You had a very horrible night. You didn't sleep well. You were worried. Maybe you had bad dreams. And you really cannot go back to sleep. Your neck is really stiff. But man, as you cannot sleep, you just drag yourself out of bed. And you're kind of grumpy. Everything feels heavy. You're walking into the kitchen. Here you are now. And how would you react if somebody would now bump into you? But you kind of lift your gaze and you look outside and whoa, the weather is actually really nice. And now you remember it's Sunday. Ooh, so you will get some rest today and you're scheduled to see your friends later today. So from this tiny little bit of looking forward, you draw some energy and you remember that you can do some morning stretches. Maybe you have a yoga practice, maybe you like to go running, and you get yourself up to actually do that. Whoa, and now you feel how your body is loosening up. Oof, and you feel some energy is actually coming in. You take deeper breaths. You feel that somebody in your body, some energy is actually rising up. And just notice, how does it feel like to be you now? And how would you react now if somebody would be to meet you? So you're getting ready to go out. In order to go and see your friends, you're taking public transport. You're going there and it's already a little bit late. And as you enter, woof, you feel it smells and it's super crowded. And in the back of the carriage, somebody is arguing. And you feel how the people in the carriage are really stressed. They're, shooting annoyed looks at each other. They're bumping into each other. You feel like there is not, a lot of care in this space. Everybody's already a little bit impatient. And you feel somehow rising in your thought that maybe people are really annoying and it really sucks to be here right now. But again, you take a breath and you hear somebody babbling behind you. It's a little tiny voice of a kiddo who is singing to themselves. And you feel something in you loosening up. And at the next stop, an elderly woman enters and 3 young people actually jump up and help her to get in and to get a seat. And you notice how the people around see this happening and how somehow the mood is loosening up. The little kiddo is smiling around, people start to interact with it. Whoa, this feels a whole lot different. You get off at your stop, your friends are already waiting, you're super happy to see each other. You can notice this joy at recognizing some faces that you even didn't expect to be there. You feel how easy it is to be here and to arrive with your people. And this is where slowly you might give yourself a shake or a deeper breath and come back to our group, to this session today. So from here, I would like to take you into the next part of our presentation. One sec, something looks a little bit weird. There we go. So as you might be able to tell from this little experience, this 4-quadrant map of how we are inside and outside, individually and collective, is not enough, because actually a lot of change is happening in every moment. So it's really not enough to describe these different dimensions as a fixed state, which is why Sophy took this basic map that Wilbur created and started to play with it a little bit. What you might have sensed a little bit now in this embodiment is that there is actually a whole lot of dynamic movement happening at all times. And also that very rarely it happens that we are in a completely healthy place where everything is just great and perfect and functioning super, super well, and is completely healed, or also that we are in a place where everything is broken and there is no, even tiny fizz of hope or of beauty or of holding. So it's much more useful to look at these different dimensions as things that are in movement, as something that is very fluid. And I'll just move us to the next slide. There we go. So there are dynamics in ourselves, within the system that is our body, but also our communities, our families, societies at large, that are taking us towards more health. They could look like things like healthy routines. I know that when I get up in the morning and I'm grumpy, it's really helping for me to go out or to move. I'm meeting my friends, which are helping me to remember community and belonging. We share, we take care of each other. And there are also dynamics that are moving us towards less health, which might be, me actually not bringing up the energy to go and move because I woke up so grumpy and everything already hurts. And I have my own spirals that I might get stuck in, but I might also look at the people in the tram that I'm taking, and be really discouraged by the state of the world when I read the news. And this is happening both on the very personal level, but also on a collective level, that in our culture, in our organization, we have practices, we have things that we do together that remind us that of health, that are healing injuries as they're happening, that are helping our bodies, our nervous systems to release stress, that help us to repair or to, make up after conflicts, or to know how to take rest when things get really stressful. And we have dynamics that are moving us to less health, like the overall culture that tells us that we need to stay productive, or that we need to be in competition, we need to consume, or also systemic or more underlying systems of power, of oppression that tell us, you know, that there are some people that are worth more than others, and that are really difficult to sometimes recognize and to move out of, and can feel very powerful. So what is really important here is that change is actually the main thing that is going on. And when we think about how to design for health, how can we influence the direction this change is taking? How can we influence whether we're moving somewhere that is less healthy or that is more healthy? How can we transition to something that is less healthy or that is more healthy? It's a little bit the same question of which wolf do we feed? And how can we consciously build in or design to feed the wolf that is actually taking us to a place where we want to be. This is my little bit, maybe just a moment to remember your body, take a breath, and I will pass you back to Dita.
Thank you, Theresa. Yes, just taking some moments to allow all that to sink in and find the places of resonance, of dissonance, of questions. So I would like to bring us just for another few minutes to some, for me, really important learnings that come from this map, from this model, from this way of looking. And we call it designing for health. And to me, that points to the agency that we have. So the first thing that comes is it's important to define what health is. And that applies to any system that we are in. It could be us, it could be like our mornings, it could be a particular organization. And it's going to look different for each person, for each level, for each group that we are. There is 5 conditions that Sophy has made part of what we believe health is in healthy human culture in this framework. And is that when we are connected, safe, empowered, valued, and resourced. And again, remember, this is not the truth. This is the way that it's been resonating for us. But the important thing is that take some time, make time in your process to define what how health looks like for your system, for your moment in life. The other thing that just bringing back in what Theresa was, this exercise of, you know, how many times did I change during those few minutes that she was carrying me through? And for me, this is just so beautiful. Change outweighs the fixed state over time. So we may start with an organization or a person or a process that is really, really healthy, but the change goes more towards unhealth. There are things happening that just keep us bringing us towards unhealth, which means that over time health deteriorates, and we end up then going in that direction. And no matter how well we started, we are going to move there. So change is important, and the opposite is true. We could start in a very disorganized group where there's very, I don't know, doing oriented, and there's no attention to the internal processes, but there is more and more change happening to incorporate that. And there we see that there is a movement towards healthier. So again, over time, health will become, health will improve if we have those processes in there. And we end up again, where are we? Where is health? And health might be changing over time. So again, keep on asking those questions. What is health? And in this case, we will be connected, safe, empowered, valued, and resourced. The next thing, and for me, it's been quite a revelation to remember that pain is important. In the culture I grew up in and the culture I am, pain is really avoided at all costs. And of course, extreme pain is not good, but paying attention to pain is important because harm will escalate if we leave it unattended. So we can have something that starts as an irritation and we ignore it, we continue doing our stuff, we evade, we take something to remove us from there, and then that escalates, it turns larger, we are arguing, we have conflict, and if we just keep on ignoring it, we end up having really, really massive stuff. So it's good to pay attention and to not just be ignoring pain all the time. And this leads me to that pain is an important signal for the system to find its way towards health, which means feedback is vital, and pain is that first thing. And when we react to it, when we have a response, that goes back to those processes that will bring us towards health, then we are incorporating it in and having it as part of our system and moving towards health. So the feedback can start with stopping and paying attention, then making meaning. Why is it irritating? Why am I having this pain? What can I do? What intervention can I design? How do I implement it, and then repeat? And then we have those processes moving us towards health. And so there are these feedback mechanisms. We can have things that are there. We have a later response, so that means we have had quite some level of pain. And the idea is that we try to be attentive to how can we make this earlier? How can we make this earlier until it's really part of that system? And I love this sentence: health is the pattern of repair woven in. So when this feedback loop has become so immediate, that is part of our system. We don't have to wait until things escalate. And that's all I want to share for now.
Thank you. So maybe another moment to shake out, to breathe deeply, feel your feet, have a look around the room, take a sip of water. And we will go into a bit of an inquiry, which is also pointing towards the kind of tool that we are sharing with you today, which is, of course, this map. And this map in movement is for quadrants in movement, along with a couple of questions that are guiding your own inquiry around what health might look like in your personal context, what feedback or pain signals might look like in your group or in your community, and also what kinds of interventions there might already be that help you to move towards more health, and how we can weave them in. So it's not what just, happens spontaneously when some harm or some stress or some difficulty arises, and how we respond to it, but how to already ahead of time, before it's even happening, think about how to bring that in. I really like the way that Dominic Barter, for example, puts it. He says we know that we're going to be hungry, so when we build houses, we also build kitchens. So we don't wait for hunger to happen, but we know this is normal when humans come together. Stress or conflict or tension or are normal, and when we work in organizations, in places where we have so much skin in the game and we want to change things for the better, it's also really quick or close to move into patterns of burnout. So if we know this, how can we already design in a way that we have more dynamics built into the system that move us to ourselves? And with this, I will share my screen again. I would like you to think of a situation, could be in your transition group, but can also be a situation from your life, your family, your collective that you're part of. We're going to write a little bit. So now is also a moment for you to fetch your notebook, your pen, or open a digital document. If you are not into writing, you can also just think it through, but for most of us, it's really helpful to have something to hold on to. And I will just take you through 4 different questions that I already mentioned. And I prepared some examples for you to give you a little bit of a sense of how they might be applied. Please don't stick to my example too closely. It's really just to get an idea of what I might be pointing at here. So the first question is, how does health look like for your context? And I bring up the example here of my time with Extinction Rebellion, with the climate movement. So health on my inside would look like I feel good, and on the outside, I am doing things in a joyful way, but I'm also taking care of myself. So that would be observable to others. On the inner dimension, we would feel good. We would care for ourselves, each other, and also the world as a whole, to really be aware of these bigger systems. And on the outside, it would be observable that we're all active in a way that supports living systems, and we're learning from things that are coming up. So to just give you about a minute to think about what does health look like for you in your context, and also with an invitation to pay attention to all of the 4 parts of the map. We don't have so much time inside of this session, so I'll already move us on. You can take some time maybe after this session to come back for this. This is really just to get the first sense. Sorry, that was one too fast. The second question is, what feedback do you notice? So where is the pain? Can you notice any signals of, discomfort or pain in some way, of like, stress or unease, both inside yourself, or if you would observe yourself from the outside, and in the collective? Do you feel good together? Is there some difference, some shift in how you're feeling? And then also on the outside, maybe there is a shift going on in how you are with each other. I wrote down here, for example, that I feel scarcity of time and stress, and also feel that on the collective level. And I can see that I am stopping my healthy routines if things are moving towards less health. And on the outside, I notice conflicts or polarization. What is this sort of feedback for you? And I'll move us to the next question. What return paths do you recognize or can you imagine? So what are ways in which you come back to health? Like, are you able on your inside to notice what's happening for me? And a return path would be to go out to nature, to rest more, to ask friends for help. And on the collective, it might be to shift out of this high tension, to find trust again, to remember the values that we share. And then on the outside, to collect feedback, to find interventions. What are return paths that you know, or even if they are not there yet, what could you imagine? And the last question is very related. Like, how could we weave in these practices that sustain health, either the ones that are already there to remember to keep doing them, or actually to not have to remember, but they will just show up on our calendar on a regular basis, or in the way that they're built into the way that we're doing things. So that might be growing capacity for self-regulation for me, and on the outside to reduce working hours, to ask friends to check in, and on the collective level to create awareness that pain is important and to listen to it, and on the outer to maybe share our agreements about how we do things, to try to do less, but actually in a sustainable way to build in these feedback loops and to learn together. What could that look like for you? Thank you. I know this is really quick. We're a little bit already over time, so I would like to check with Dita if we have 3 minutes for each of us to share, or if we should reduce. Because the next bit is that we would like to send you off into breakout rooms to talk with each other about what you were finding when you went through this little exercise. Is there something that really struck you, that surprised you? What were you noticing when you maybe paid attention to the 4 different parts of the map for the first time, or also not? Maybe this is something that you do on a regular basis. What are the things that are really standing out for you? How do you feel, Dita?
Yeah. Let's do it 3 minutes. It's
Okay.
short.
So you will probably be in groups of 3 or sometimes 2, and you have 3 minutes each. So we will send little reminders to change person, but please also just take care to make space for everybody to share. And the question is, what struck you?
So just, reshaping into this collective. And it would be just great to have some other voices. So if there's something that became really alive from this conversation, this exercise, you can put it in the chat, or if somebody wants to speak, just take some minutes to gather something that struck you, something that you will, maybe you were like, oh, this really doesn't work at all. This is rubbish for me. That's really welcome as well. So what are you with?
I also saw that there is already a question
Oh, thank you.
in the chat. So yeah, welcoming like these first responses, and then we can also take a little bit of time to dive more into questions and your understanding.
Claudia.
Hi. Yeah, I was just thinking about what Sophie said at the beginning of the webinar about the grief. This is something which I talked about in my group, but I think it's something that resonated with me, is talking about the collective grief. Maybe I'm saying what you said, Sophie, but about the past and our previous generations and you know what's gone on in the world, but putting it onto the axis of the I and the we and the inner and the outer. And so my ancestors and my family and what's gone on with them, and then the whole world and colonialization and wars and you know all the different things that's happened. And sort of it's something that I've never thought about before. In my family, we've always celebrated our ancestors, my father's, and sort of, you know, from an Irish lineage hundreds of years back, and he's a genealogist and he's researched all the family history, and so we know a lot about the family and we celebrate them. But now I'm kind of thinking, actually, is this something we need to grieve? And it's like thinking of it in a different way and pushing my ancestors and the rest of the world picture together, which I've never thought about before. So thank you for that.
Thank you for bringing those layers in. And yeah, I think Sophie might touch into that as well. But just I want to remind myself and everyone that this is about that collective trauma as well, and the effects of that nestedness that I hear in what you're speaking of. It's not disconnected, and how it affects me and how I can have an influence on that. Thank you, Claudia. I'm really interested in that question, Nadia, that you put in the chat about what happens when something I need doesn't serve the collective, and how do we have that conversation? Wow, I mean that's a huge question, and whether the aim of change for more health has to happen in the 4 quadrants equally, I don't know, and I don't think I can imagine in many situations it's not possible. I don't know if Sophie also you want to bring some of that in, but I think for me the quadrants, applying this model is just to be okay. So why do I have to change? What is how am I not able to care for this person anymore? And what can I do to support that? What is the system? What can the system, the outer, do for me? What the collective can do? So I don't think it will, the aim is that it changes equally, but it's more about observing, and also how does it change within? So do I need to change how am I standing regarding me and the collective, and also remembering that the dynamic state is really important, that it's not about being fixed in one particular state. Anything else? Anybody else wants to share?
I think following in from what you just said, Dita, I think I am in a position where I had expected more help than I get. So I have a child with disabilities and developmental trauma, which developmental trauma is absolutely easy to get over as long as there are enough good, kind, caring adults to co-regulate. That, although I live in one of the most gorgeous places in the UK for greenness and for kindness and all that, actually, people don't help. And I don't know whether that is now. Also, I have ADHD and I have done environmental work for 30 years and kind of live in and exist in a giving sector. And so this is quite a surprise. But I know from hanging around adoption that it happens a lot. And sometimes it is people who have done this kind of work that have removed themselves. And I thought, oh my God, I thought you'd be somebody that would help. But actually they're doing all the sort of, I need to, for myself, I need to, you know, go in and they've kind of gone away, not physically because their children are still at the same school, but really removed themselves. And I think this is a problem, actually. People going too inner And I don't know what to do about that, because some of us are fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting and need the help. And actually, it's quite interesting who isn't there. There we go. That's all I've got to say. But I mean, yeah, I live with it. I live with it. It's very hard.
Oof, yes. Oh, thank you so much for that, Alison. There's something that it just comes very alive for me with this, and it's that initially I understood this quadrant as the I, the individual, and the collective. And for me, it's like, I don't want to be an individual. I want to always be part of a collective. And I think it's just remembering that continuum, and something that finding health within might mean that I am not just caring for myself, but I'm spending my resources and my time. I'm not talking about you, but about the people around you. That sometimes the best way of caring for me is to care for the group, because then we are doing that together. But again, that's just such a big thing. Thank you
and
so
I did
much.
have that conversation yesterday with somebody that had finally winkled them out after more than a year of not talking to. I mean, not talking to me, but doing self-care. And then she realized that it was actually really joyful and positive talking to me and being out and not just being in. I guess I know that sort of stuff because it's my business, but yeah, it was really, really interesting. Thank you.
I'm also curious, very curious, how does this work in other in other cultures where individualization hasn't happened to the extreme that has happened around here? Sophie, I saw you were going to say something.
I just want to bring in that piece about scale, isn't it? And it was a question in another group that we were with recently of what does it mean to try to create health or sanity in a wider culture where so much is broken, isn't it? And I feel like this question around parenting comes again and again in more modern cultures where all of, like you're pointing to, Dita, the pattern of intergenerational, of co-parenting, co-mothering, not living in boxes separate from each other, it has disappeared. But I also just wanted to pick up some of the other questions. So somebody was saying, Maya, your question about, what is health? And I think it's so interesting where we run out of language, isn't it? Like what should we put on that side of the map? That is the thing that we're trying to have more of. What word do we use? And I really agree that, health isn't the right word. But for me, it has its roots in things like in wholeness, in healing, that feel like it's got some of the qualities that I want it to carry. And for me, part of health is that there's an intact web of relationships. I'm going to share a little teaser for another map, but this sense of actually how much unhealth is to do with rupture to relationships, whether that is within myself, the web of community and holding intergenerational across peers and with the wider field of life. So, maybe there's another word, but in English, I don't know what it is. There may be a better word in your language. But I do think it's really important that we ask the question, what is it? What are the characteristics, whether we call it health or something else? And find where we don't agree, because the neoliberals certainly wouldn't agree with my definition of what health is. Like that would be a very different version. But even people that are close to me have a different version. So it's a bit of Irish. Yeah, but I think it's such a good question.
Can I add something there as well? And I think one of the things that I find beautiful about this as a practice is, I don't want somebody else out there to define what health is for me or for my group. But I want to sit down with my community and think and feel, what is health? What do I need? So trying to reclaim the processes for whatever it might have a different name. But even if it's wilderness, I live in a rewilding place at the moment, and there's so much discussion about what is wilderness. So it's like, for every of those things, can we just reclaim at the level of the community, at the level of the people who are working and receiving these things? Can we define what it is, and can we just move in that direction? Thank you so much for that also really beautiful and big question. And I think we're just moving towards you, Sophie. So if you want to just let us hear more of your voice.
I just want to pick up, sorry, go on, Theresa.
Oh.
I just want to pick up Ava's question as well, you know, about overwhelm, isn't it? Overwhelm. How do we respond? And I just want to put in the word niches. You know, I think this thing about scale is so interesting, isn't it? Like, and I hear you speaking to the shadow of that, Alison, that I make a little niche in which I can recover, that I take myself out, and that may or may not help. But sometimes the niche is me and one or two others, isn't it, in an organization or in a group where actually there's so much unhealth, but I need some sense of allyship or companionship or shared worldview in order to not continually feel that I am crazy. So I was just going to put in a little teaser. I feel like this map is the most sort of abstract map of the ones that we've developed in healthy human culture. And for me, you know, a good map is not about defining something. It's about enabling me to navigate. So it's giving me more agency to choose how I move in a landscape. And so for me, that's why this, you know, it's boxes and it's, you know, arrows, but why that is helpful is to get a sense of how am I moving. And I really liked drawing this map and getting the sense, especially that the change dynamics are more important than where I am. So this sense of which direction am I moving in, which way am I pointing? And when I'm heading in the wrong direction, how do I notice that and catch that and bring myself back? Or in a group, you know, how do I get, for me as a facilitator, how do I grow my confidence to interrupt a group process that's not heading in a good direction and at least say, stop, let's just listen to what's happening. And then can we make an intervention that brings us back? So if this map is doing its job, I can, you know, my body's doing this. It's giving us this sense that we're always being impacted across scale, that the inner and outer are never really separate, and that there's always these dynamics. There's always shadow. There's always unhealth and things that are taking us away from health, especially in these times, you know, in the world of modernity. It's woven into me, these systems of harm. But also there's always the longing for health, the possibility of health, the possibility of bringing wisdom and good structures. So that's the kind of, isn't it? I feel like a bit like a jellyfish or an octopus, you know, that different parts of me are moving in different directions, but, you know, together, can we increase the parts of us that are moving in the way we want to move? Have I got time to just share the second map? Looking at Dita and Theresa.
Yes,
We
please.
have about 3 minutes.
2 minutes. Okay, I'm just going to share this. Some of you may have seen it already. It's like a little map of culture again, and you can see here's another much more detailed offer of what health is. So if you come on our Healthy Human Culture learning journey, or you watch some of the videos on the website, you'll see the sense that health is strength and love interconnected. We go into stress states, but we have these return paths. We're catching, and we have practices that help bring us back to our interconnection of trust, value, and so on. And then, you know, this brings us much more to the landscape that I was speaking about at the beginning, that trauma and collective trauma is not about shock and stress and violence. It's about the failure of that return path. And then when there isn't a way back to repair, to rebuild trust, then we find ourselves in this landscape where now strength distorts to fight, flight, domination, But also the love archetype of, you know, of connection distorts into appeasing exhaustion, collapse, sort of inability to set boundaries. You know, and if I was going to spend more time with you, Nadia, on that question about, you know, my needs and the needs of somebody else, you know, I would be inviting a question about how do you feel your own strength, your own love archetype, and to feel them in balance for yourself and in relationship to others. So this is like a little teaser that we can go a lot deeper into health and unhealth. And this map includes much more around what is trauma, what's running the system that's out of awareness, what happens when we don't include that, and what are ways that we can. I think my last word is to say healthy human culture doesn't give us the conflict resolution technologies, but it gives us the map to see where we need to bring them in. So, you know, things like NVC, restorative justice, you know, are the return paths, and other people are the experts in that. So this is a much more kind of general view of culture, and to support us to think about it in a more inclusive and complete way, which I just want to say, I know that everybody who comes to inner transition is already doing, isn't it? We're not the ones that leave out the inner and outer. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on the recording, but anyway. I'm finished. Thank you. Thank you so much, hosts and everybody, for being here.
Before we hand back now to Eva, I just want to say I posted in the chat the website of Healthy Human Culture. So if you're curious now after getting this teaser, there is a website that will soon be updated, but we will announce there our next offers and possibilities to dive a little bit more. If you would like to just hear again about what is Healthy Human Culture all about, there is a podcast interview on accidental gods, which is excellent. And Sophy is also offering grief tending as one of the return paths. So there is a website with those offers as well. And we would love to see you again. And we'll also stay on for an extra secret half an hour on this call if you have a little bit more time and would like to hang out with us and chat and ask more. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, you three. That was really lovely, really interesting and engaging, and such a helpful model for all kinds of different situations and levels, and leaves loads of questions, I think, for people to explore over time. So yeah, I wanted to say thank you too for to everyone who's turned up, and just shout out that there's lots more coming up from the Inner Transition Circle. We seem to be fruiting at the moment after maybe quite a long time of growing our fruit. We've got some into beingness session at the end of March, which is just about a space to connect, to be with one another, and to share deeply. We've got a deep colonization recovery circle in early April, as part of the practicing transition process. And we've got the next one of these is at the end of April on the 29th with Paul Kahawate on conflict, collaboration and collective power. So the links, I think, are in the chat. If you follow those, you can find out more about all of that. And yeah, just I guess if you're leaving, then if you'd like to open your mic and say goodbye in your own language, it would be lovely. And if you're sticking around, then stick around. Oh, that's on accidental gods. Yeah, I don't know if there's